Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, we're going to solve a common data science data analysis challenge, and that is ultimately bridging the gap between the data science notebook or wherever you write your code and the presentations, the slideshows, the reports that you often share with business stakeholders. So in this video, we will see how we can take a notebook that looks like this, a bunch of code everywhere, a bunch of graphs, but it's a bit messy. There's a lot here and it's hard to process by just looking at this alone. And we'll see how we can turn it into a much more human readable, much more digestible HTML analytics report, as you can see here, with descriptions of what the different graphs means and some recommendations for a telecom company. So the data set that we'll be working off of in this video comes from this Kaggle data set. It is telecom customer churn data. So given a bunch of customers and information about the customers, like how much they're spending per month, how long they've been with the company, etc. Can we predict, or not even necessarily can we predict, but can we see why certain people are churning, meaning they're leaving our telecom company versus others are not? So this data is available on Kaggle. I think it originally came from IBM, but you can also access it via the GitHub repo that is linked in the description. So we'll see how we can take a messy notebook that has some analysis and insights and turn it into an HTML report using Quarto. So I think the first step in this is that we have this notebook, and I think we can see what happens if we render this with Quarto by default as an HTML file. So what I might do is that you can access all of these files via the GitHub link, so feel free to clone the repo, but I might just make a copy just so I can kind of see the changes in what we've done of this notebook, paste it, and I might call this something like report.ipython notebook. And both the starting file, analysis.ipython notebook, and the ending file, this report that we're going to be working off, are both in the GitHub repo, so feel free to see the before and after. But the first step that I want to do is take this notebook. I'm going to open up a terminal window, and I guess I can do that in VS Code with this. And I want to render this IPython notebook as an HTML file. If you're not super familiar with Quarto, we've posted a Quarto crash course recently. A link to that is in the description, so you can understand all the basics of Quarto, and a video like this will make more sense. But you also can watch this without any prior Quarto knowledge and kind of get a feel of what you can do with Quarto. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a Quarto render report.ipython notebook. And it's kind of cool that I can just create files off of these Jupyter notebooks directly. And we see we have a report.html created. So if I look at my files, we see report.html. I'll go ahead and open this. Okay. We see we have a file that looks like this. And basically, it just looks very, very similar to our notebook. So it's not quite super digestible yet. I think we can do some things to immediately make it more digestible for a potential client. So imagine we are working for this telecom company and we're a consulting company, and we're saying they hired us to be like, hey, why are our customers leaving? We want to get it into a format where we can bring back our analysis and be like, hey, this is why. And we're not quite there yet. We don't want them to see the code. We don't want them to see a lot of the aspects of this. So let's go ahead and make some immediate changes that will make this a bit easier to share with a client. The first thing you'll want to do is we should, above our title, add some of the YAML parameters. So with any sort of Quarto document, we're going to add these parameters. And I think it's fine that you do this in a markdown cell. I think you could also do this in a raw text cell within your Jupyter notebook, but I'm going to make this format. We'll start with an HTML. I don't need to add a title right now, but one thing that I do want to probably do is I'm going to make the code echo equaling false. Will make the code not show up. So I'm going to go ahead and now rerun this. We can look at this file now. I'm going to refresh this. And now we don't see any of our code. So that's a good starting point. However, there's also just a bunch of random text and stuff on the screen that I'm still seeing. So let's maybe try to hide some more details here. So like, for example, all of this stuff probably don't need to see. So one thing that's cool that you can do is you can use this pound pipe syntax and specify different parameters within your code cells. So if I do output is false here, and now rerun this, we see all this info right now in our, or I guess I'm at the very bottom, so let me go up top. We see all this info right now in our report, but if I refresh this, we don't see it anymore and we start with our table. So that's a bit better of an option. I also don't need to show stuff like import necessary libraries and load data. That's not very helpful here. So let's go ahead and hide that from our notebook. And one thing you can do is if you know Quarto, you can use that same type of fence div syntax. So I could add a fence div like content hidden. There's a bunch of different built-ins like content hidden that are useful to know, because you can also do like content visible, and you could add like conditionals like only showing these headers if the format is a PDF, for example. So content hidden and content visible are good parameters to know about. I add this, and now if we rerun our notebook, we will see this disappear when I refresh. So we see that disappear, so that's hiding like a header. This is already looking a bit better, but it's not perfect. One thing that I might want to do too is that there seems to be error messages down here. And I probably should hide all error outputs. I think that would be worthwhile. So I can do that with doing warning is also false. And again, we'll regenerate this, refresh this, and we see those messages disappear. I don't know what's going on with this one down here, but we probably can get rid of that as well. Other things is maybe as part of this analysis, as part of this consulting work we're doing, we're building a model to help predict churn of users, but maybe all of this stuff is not quite ready to share yet. So if I wanted to hide a bunch of sections in code, I could do it the same way we just hid that header. So go into our code. I'm going to go down to the model section. And above this, I will add that same fence div. And I just want to hide all of this content for now. Maybe in the future, we will share another report with them. And I could add another. So we have this up top. I could add another cell down at the bottom and just close off. This will make this markdown and close off it. And if we run this, we're going to see that whole model building section disappear. So we see we have model building right now. If I refresh the page, it all disappears. Okay, so now we just really have our analysis. And I think graphs alone aren't necessarily the most helpful. I think it's a matter of showing the graphs and telling this story alongside the graphs. So let's start telling stories as part of our code. And I guess to tell the story, we have to understand the story. So a few things that we'll note immediately is that, okay, roughly, I guess this gives us an exact number, 26.5% of our customers churned. And that's about, roughly 2,000. And, we had, 5,200, let's say, stay as part of our company. If we look at the distribution of this information, we see that their tenure, so how long they've been with the company, the likelihood that they're going to churn is super, super high. It's a great percentage of those new customers, and it's still pretty high the first few months here in this histogram we see. So if you're a new customer, we want to pay more attention to you because you're at the greatest risk of churning, as we can see by this. So understanding new customers are likely to churn, that's helpful insight for our customer. We also see that if we look at the relative monthly charges, we kind of get, low churn, low churn, low churn if the price is cheap. But as we start getting into these higher price points, the percentage of customers in that bin, that monthly charge range, there's a higher percentage of them that are going to churn if they're paying these higher monthly charges. Another insight from this numeric data. And then finally, we see that basically as the total amount of charges. So I would think of this as tenure times monthly charges. If people stick around and have spent a lot of money with our telecom company, they're less likely to churn. So we want to keep our customers happy in the early months, because once they've spent some money and know our service, know our product, then they're less likely to churn. So another insight from all of this. So I'm doing things like this, actually getting the insights and thinking about them, and then let's actually write some text on the screen that kind of captures some of this stuff. So I'll go ahead and capture some of those thoughts, and then you can also look through these bar charts and see some other insights on these more binary variables. So like gender has very little effect. If they're a senior citizen, yes, they're more likely to churn. So maybe they're not understanding the technology as well or something. Maybe there's more hurdles. It seems like if someone has a partner independence, they're less likely to churn. So maybe it's just more important that they have our service. They're less independent and can just pick up and leave and move to a new provider. More people in their family depend on the current service. We see that fiber optic gives us a much higher likelihood of churn, as well as month-to-month contracts are great indicators of churn. So we want to probably move as many people to 1 year and 2 year contracts. So some more insights I'm just kind of speaking out, but let's put this all on the screen in our notebook. Okay, so we have our report. And I want to add some text to all of this. So we just were talking about these plots. So maybe I add a markdown cell above or below this graph. And we'll make this markdown. And I can paste in some thoughts I have about these numeric features. This is kind of what I just said. Can add this. And then maybe for the same thing with the bar charts, we add some text details. We had this markdown, and we add some bullet points on kind of what we're thinking about. So these were some insights from the bar charts. Cool. Let's rerun this real quick and just see what we have now. One good thing to note real quick is if you are generating these Quarto reports via the command line and via a Jupyter notebook, one thing that you'll want to do is potentially add this render and then this -- execute parameter. This will just make sure that all of your Jupyter Notebook cells are run so that it's not just using what's already on the screen. It's actually rerunning the code as well to produce the report. Okay, so let's run that command. Okay, and now let's look at our report. Okay, so we should see some text now pop up on the screen. Okay, we see that. That's good. We'll improve the formatting soon. That's good. We have some more insights. Maybe we also add some insights at the top. So before this initial data exploration section. So just kind of talking about the process that we're doing in general. So what I could do here is add, right below this title, some more text. So maybe I'm just giving a bit of an overview on what we're doing here. And let's say our consulting company is called like Alpha Consulting Co. And this is just kind of a high level what this report is providing. Add that to our report. Trying to think if there's other things that we want to do. One thing that I'm seeing down here too is that this text is showing up on the screen alongside our graphs. If you do a plot.show with your matplotlib, this will help fix this issue. So I'm going to do plot.show in both of these scenarios. So we should see that disappear. Let's go ahead and run that command again. Okay, so we should see this text disappear. We should see an overview over at the top of our report. Cool, we got our overview. We got our high-level overview of the data. Cool, this is starting to be better and better. One thing I'm seeing is some of the page details are getting cut off. There's a few different solutions to this. One thing that you can do is there's a web page that can be helpful here. I'm going to go to docs/output formats/page layout. And this gives us a little bit of information on, an HTML page. as well as like, how much space we have in the bottom body here. So what I might do to help give myself more space for my graphs is I might make the page layout full, and then I might specify a little bit of a larger body width here in our document. So to do that, we can go into our parameters. I can add maybe we specifically modify the HTML settings in case we wanted to add more types of documents. So I want to add page, what was that called? Page layout full. And then maybe I wanted to customize the grid, and we see the grid down here at the bottom. And maybe I want to change the body width to be a bit bigger than 800 px. So we're basically changing this. We're changing those, specifically the body width. So I'll say it's like 1200 px. This is kind of a little bit of playing around with things to figure this out. Cool. Another minor detail that you'll want to do is if you just took this report.html file and like, let's say I, opened it up in the Finder. Let's say I made a copy of it and put it in my downloads, and then I tried opening it up. What you'll see is a file that looks like this, and not the most appealing looking file. So another thing that I recommend that you add to your code is embed resources true. And that basically, instead of adding these extra files that do the formatting or like the styling and whatnot, it all is encapsulated in the report.html. So if you do move the file or share the file, whoever gets it will be able to work off of things immediately. Maybe we also wanted to add a PDF version of this to our doc, and this would require some more formatting probably. I probably won't get into the details here, but it's a cool setting to see that we have. And maybe we also add a table of contents to our doc. So we added a bunch of things here. Let's see what our changes look like. Okay, so let's think what we added here. We had a table of contents, PDF. We embedded the resources. We made the page wider. So now we got something that looks like this, taking up much more of the page. And you can kind of decide what's right for you, but I like that it has this ability. That's pretty good. We're getting there. Maybe we add some recommendations down at the bottom for what we recommend they do as a company. Based on what we've already chatted about a little bit, like we want to spend more attention with them early on in their tenure. We want to maybe add incentives or something to get more people off of these month-to-month contracts and to the 1 year and 2 year contracts. Because we see with these graphs down here, like these are all the month-to-month contracts, high churn percentage, even if they've been with the company for a while. Whereas these are the churn percentages for 1 year contracts, pretty low across the board. And then it gets even lower across the board. This is relative percentages for these bins when we get to 2 year contracts. So maybe we offer some discounts or whatnot. This graph isn't very helpful. Let's hide this graph too. But let's add some recommendations to our notebook. So you can either do it below or before model building. I'm going to just do it after or before the model building stuff because that's all hidden anyways. So we'll add, markdown, we'll add some recommendations, and I'm just going to paste these in to save some time. Okay, so here are some recommendations, and here are some of our findings, just kind of recapped. It's good to kind of encapsulate this all in text, I would say, especially if you're sending this and not actually talking about it with a client in a meeting or something. It's just a standalone document. Cool, and it also mentions that we're gonna work on our model that's currently hidden from the report. That's good. What was the other thing that we mentioned that we wanted to do here? Oh, we wanted to hide this graph specifically, I think. I don't think this was very useful. Oh, it's not showing right now, for whatever reason. Let's try running all this code again. Okay, I want to hide this so I could, again, do output false to hide it. Let's rerun this. We're going to see this disappear, and we're going to see our recommendations at the bottom. So I'm going to refresh this first. What I was trying to check with this plot was that, how much are people spending on the different contracts? But this dimensionality doesn't really help us. So it's much more meaningful of a visual. I guess this is not the same visualization. But basically what we see from this is just that people kind of spend different monthly charges, whether they're month to month, 1 year or 2 years. So there's not like a significant difference in charges that they're paying, or like they're not saving a significant amount of money. It seems like as is on 1 year or 2 year, which is something we probably should recommend for them to do. But I don't need to show that graph. Yeah. So here are recommendations. Cool. All right. I think the biggest thing we want to do now is just maybe package this text and this data in a little bit better of a format. So other things we could do here is we could add, I could add a bigger font size. Maybe I make my font size 18 pixels. I don't know if this is going to be too big. Let's just see what this looks like real quick. I don't know if that font size changed anything. Instead of pixels, I might have to do PT. Run that one more time. Okay, so our text is bigger. So depending on if you think the text should be bigger or not, that's good. I think we should just try to organize this a bit better, make these side by side in columns, just kind of fill the space a bit better. This is a really tall graph. So, put this side by side, or I guess put this side by side with this. We could add some dividers between sections. So let's go ahead and do that. And one thing that I do encourage you to check out is that, it's nice sometimes to work in this Jupyter Notebook, but you also can very easily convert your Jupyter Notebook file, this IPython notebook file, into a Quarto Markdown file. So if I run Quarto convert report.ipython notebook, we'll now have an equivalent Quarto Markdown file. Very, very helpful. And maybe I want to just do some of the steps here because I think it's a little easier to add columns and whatnot via this Quarto Markdown file. For example, we wanted to maybe make 2 columns, so I could add a layout number of columns equals 2 right here. And then the churn graph should be right next to the counts should be right next to the pie chart. Also, one nice thing about using the QMD is I can really quickly render it via the preview button. And I can see it in this little window. Okay, so that's now nicely next to each other. Okay, maybe we make this a level 2 header, make this a level 3 header, numeric features right here. Okay, I want to make this graph right here side by side with my text. So to do that, what I could do is I want to maybe move the text to be on the left side. I can also separate it from this other section by using these 3 asterisks. You'll see a line now be created between them. But then I want to we'll add a different type of layout here. We'll add a layout equals, and we'll put in, how about 30% of our space gets taken up by the text and 70% gets taken up by the chart. I think that this should work out of the box. Let's see. And I probably will have to open this up full screen to actually see this. Okay, side by side, cool. We see a nice line between here. Okay, this layout's not working right now. Not sure why. Might have specified something a little bit off. I think maybe I have to actually surround this in quotes. not quite working how we wanted it to. What we could do though is we can show, like basically it's getting confused because it's taking this as a column and then it's taking this as a column and then it's taking all of this as a column. So what we could do to make this a little bit more explicit is I can make this an outer fence div. I'm gonna use 5 to do that. I can make an inner fence div, which is my first column, and then close that off, and then make a second column and close that off right before the full fence div closes. Oh, we see that it's already looking better, at least in this preview. Refresh. Cool, that looks pretty good. We also probably could caption this as like, these are categorical features, so I might add a little bit more notation. Categorical features, cool. Maybe I want to add some text here too. So maybe add some more formatting here. And I want this to take up, how about 70% of the space? This to take up 30. So little details on the fiber optic information. We see we have these charts. Maybe I wanted to put them all next to each other. So I could do something like layout number of columns equals 3. And then I could do something called, I could go to this article layout and see all the different options. Maybe I wanted to take up the full screen. I could add this column screen parameter or column screen inset. So I'll do that real quick. Cool. Now what we're going to see, I got to close this off. But actually, it's already basically working. Cool. Maybe I want to add a line in between these. And you can decide if this is right or not. Maybe this is too squished. But I want to add some more sections. So add a line, separate this a bit more. Add a line here to separate a bit more, and then maybe add some text after this. Basically just saying, or maybe I put it above. So maybe I give this a little section header. Churn by type of contract. Maybe I give this a header of, why might internet service matter? Okay. Then add some text. How about here? Like, just basically specifying what we are seeing with the different types of contracts. Run this. Refresh our page. See that? Cool. Recommendations. Awesome. This looks pretty good. One minor thing is if you wanted to make this data a little bit more play aroundable, you could add a interactive table. So that's done using this iTables library. So I could do import iTables, and this is in the requirements.txt. And then I could do iTables.show. How about the first 50 rows? Now, if we see what this looks like, now we can just like have a little bit more interactivity looking at our data. So if you gave this to a client, they could, play around with this a bit. This all looks pretty good. Last thing is you could either send them this report.html, or maybe it makes sense for you to host it somewhere. So one easy thing that you can do is if you push this to a GitHub repo and you sign up with Posit Connect Cloud, you can publish a Quarto doc. So like we could take this repo that we're working off of, we could take the master branch, and then we could publish. So I might need to push this real quick. So there's two ways I would recommend publishing. You can either publish this QMD file, or you could actually add your report.html and publish and make sure it's, has this embed resources true, and add this to your repo and specify that to be rendered. So to do either of these things though, I would basically see my changes, git add report.qmd. Maybe I add my report, the changes to my analysis report. Maybe I add that report.html. The one thing is, once you converted an IPython notebook to the QMD, you might have two kind of files in parallel. You might want to figure out what you want to do with both of them. So you could either keep them both, or decide what format you want to work in. Finished code from video, git push origin master. So now if I go to that Posit Connect Cloud, I will see the option to specify a primary file. So our file is called report.qmd or HTML. Either of these will work just fine. I'll go ahead and do the HTML version, publish this. Now we have our report online on a web page. We can share this with someone. We could get the link right here, copy it, share it with a client, whatnot. That's going to be much easier to work with this. You still have your same code, your same notebook that you could play around with and tweak things more. But now we have a nice, more human readable way to display our insights and findings. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty quick that we can do this. Definitely can be very, very helpful to incorporate into your workflow. One last thing that I should mention is that we could also very easily convert our QMD file. So if I, let's say, deleted my report file now, I could very easily convert my report.qmd file back to a IPython notebook file. So you can go to and from these formats very easily. It might change up things a little bit on you on how things are formatted and worded, but can be very, very helpful. All right, that is converting Jupyter Notebooks to reports in Python using Quarto. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to throw it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be back with another Quarto and Python video very soon. Until next time, everyone, peace out.